Okay, yo, what's going on, guys? We're back in here, and today this is gonna be kind of a quick run through video. We're gonna be talking about every team's future in the NBA. I'm gonna say like what I think they should do, and basically what they probably will do, and we're just gonna hop right into this. So first of all, we're starting off with the Philadelphia 76ers. With the 76ers, I mean, in the making of this video, they're down 3-1 to the Celtics. They play tonight, and they'll most likely lose because it's at Boston. But if you look at this team, I mean, you got Embiid, he's 24. Simmons is 21. You know, obviously you got Markelle Fultz down here. He's just 19. And, I mean, they really have, like, a lot of shooters, too. They got Ersan, Ilyasova, Bellinelli, Covington, Saric, Redick. They got a lot of shooters. I think they're going in the right direction. I think, though, that this series is not necessarily the best in telling for the future, though, or at least, like, the best, what do you call it, like, kind of outlook. Like, it wouldn't look too nice for the Sixers because they're losing to a team down 3-1 without their two best players. So, I don't know. Hopefully they can figure it out, though. They will be contenders for the next many years to come. Alright, now we got the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, the Milwaukee Bucks, the problem with this team, I think, is honestly shooting. Like, I mean, you got Malcolm Brogdon. He's an alright shooter. But, I mean, then you look at, obviously, Giannis is, he's like an average shooter, not really a great shooter. You kind of need some shooting. Chris Middleton is not a bad shooter. Jabari Parker, I mean, these stats are kind of misleading based off the way he shot kind of for the main part of the season. Not to say that he's a terrible shooter, though. I mean, Eric Bledsoe, never really been a shooter. John Henson obviously can't stretch the floor. I mean, Tony Snell, I thought was supposed to be a shooter, but, I mean, the dude didn't shoot well at all in the playoffs. So, I mean, you kind of just look at this team, and it's like, you don't really have any shooters. But, I mean, the plus side of this team is that outside of Jason Terry, everyone else on the team is 28 years old or younger, which is a big plus. Now, I think they might have to get rid of Eric Bledsoe. I thought it was going to work out. It obviously is not because you need shooting and you need a better inside presence. Now, I think next year, hopefully, is the year that Thonmaker steps up because I think he can be that guy. But, I mean, right now, it's not John Henson. It's definitely not Tyler Zeller. So, I think they just need an inside presence and, you know, maybe get some shooting or something. Maybe get rid of Bledsoe if you have to. But, I mean, other than that, they could be contenders, too, for a while. Maybe not to the level of the Sixers, but, I mean, they'll definitely be competing. Next, we got my team, the Chicago Bulls. Now, with the Bulls, I mean, obviously, they're going to have to trade Robin Lopez sooner than later. I mean, if you look at the rest of this team, I mean, obviously, we got Omer Sheik. But, I mean, next year is his last year on his contract. And, I mean, we're not competing for a title next year. So, but, I mean, we got a relatively young team. I mean, I would like Cameron Payne to be gone as a Bulls fan, to be honest. But, and probably Jerry Grant. But, this is like the foundation of our team. Maybe even Bobby Portis, too. It depends what happens if we trade him or not. But, I mean, really these three guys are the foundation of our team. You know, Markkanen could be the next Dirk, potentially. You know, Zach LaVine. I mean, Zach LaVine, he really, I don't think, had that bad of a year. I mean, the stats don't show up here, but, I mean, just last year averaged about 19, 3.5, and 3. I think this year he averaged like 16.5, 17 points a game. But he was playing less minutes, too. And he was also, you know, coming off an injury. So, I mean, that's not bad. Chris Dunn had a way better year. See, this is his stats last year, about 4 points, 2 assists, 2 boards. This year he had like 14 points a game, I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, I'm liking this team. This team, I mean, I can't really necessarily say they're going to be like the Sixers and compete for titles because we don't know exactly what their ceiling is yet. But, I mean, in a few years, they're definitely going to be a playoff team. I think they could be a top 4, top 5 team in the East for sure. But, you know, hopefully we can get a title. Next is the Cavaliers, and their future relies basically around one player, and that's LeBron. I mean, if LeBron leaves this offseason, which is I really don't see it happening. I never I've never seen it happening. Sorry, but uh, yeah. So I mean, if LeBron leaves and they can get a jump start on like the rebuild, basically, because I mean these guys. I mean, if you have Kevin Love, Larry Nance, Rodney Hood, I mean they could be maybe squeak in the playoffs or something, but it's like they're not going to compete, and that's just straight up facts. I mean, if you still have LeBron, then you're still competing, obviously. Then I'd probably, get some guys around him for the time being, but they're going to be competing for a few more years, and then, once LeBron retires, then it's probably just going to be start a rebuild. I personally think they should start the rebuild now, just because, I mean, LeBron is great, and he can get you to the finals, but, I mean, he didn't beat the Warriors last year with Kyrie and Kevin Love. Now Kyrie is gone. Now you got the Warriors, who seem even better right now. You got the Rockets, who are much improved. Boston Celtics next year are going to be a problem. And speaking of the Boston Celtics, here we go. This team, I personally think this team is going to win the East next year. Could potentially win the title next year. But, I mean, you got Kyrie, you got Gordon Hayward, and Al Horford. Those are three guys that have been all-stars within the past 2 years. Really 2 years, considering Gordon Hayward, who probably would have been an all-star this year, assuming that he hadn't got injured. And, I mean, if you want to talk about future all-stars, I mean, this guy, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart, even Marcus Morris is playing like out of his mind. They're all playing like they are all-stars. So, I mean, and that's crazy. And you still got like guys like Greg Monroe and Aaron Baines, who are very serviceable players. This Ojale dude, Shane Larkin. Like, I didn't know much about this Ojale dude. Like, I knew who he was, but it's like that's about it. But he has played pretty well in the playoffs too. This will be a scary team. I personally think this. I won't say the Warriors of the East for the years to come, because I think the Sixers have a chance for sure. I think the Bucks, with a few changes, could have a chance, but I mean, they are probably going to be the top team in the East for the future. You look at the Los Angeles Clippers now. I mean, I like Lou Williams. I like the fact that he's on a team where he can do what he wants. Last year, he averaged 17.5 points a game. This season, he averaged about 23 points, along with I think about 5 rebounds and 5 assists or something, which is crazy. Probably the biggest all-star snub. But, yeah, I mean, if you just look at this team, they didn't make the playoffs. I know part of that was probably, like, adjusting with the recent acquisitions of Tobias Harris and Avery Bradley. Also the fact that, I mean, Patrick Beverley missed over half the year. Gallinari missed a lot of the year. Austin Rivers was injured for some time. DeAndre Jordan, I know, missed like a stretch of games. So, I mean, they could have another crack at it. I think maybe one more year they'll try it, and then I really don't think they'll get in the playoffs. And I think they need to kickstart the rebuild after that. And then you got this team. This team, honestly, should just rebuild right now. I think they're going to be competitive, though. Like, next season, like, I wouldn't be surprised if they are competing. But the thing is, the whole Western Conference is going to be, like, competing. Like, it's so hard to pick teams that will be bad. Like, outside of maybe the Dallas Mavericks and the Sacramento Kings, like, I don't know if any other team, even the Phoenix Suns will be good next year. I don't know if any other team will be like below 35 wins. Like, it's hard to predict it. And I mean, this team, when they were healthy at the beginning of the year, they were like, I think had like the best record, second best record in the league. And I mean, part of that was also because like it was early in the season. Another part of that was also because injury to Mike Conley. They thought that they still think that they can compete, which is great to have that mentality, but to be honest, I think they should just blow it up. I mean, you got two guys that are over 30. Tyreek Evans is most likely going to walk, considering that you were going to trade him and then didn't. So, Yeah, I think they should rebuild right now. I feel like they're going to try it like a few more years. Might not ever trade these guys, but hopefully, for the sake of these guys and the Grizzlies, that they do. Next, we got the Hawks. Now, the Hawks, they're kind of a weird team. It's, like I like the direction they're going in. I think Ken Bazemore might have to go. He's got a hefty contract. It's only 2 more years, though, but you could probably trade him soon. So, get that off the books. He's going to be an expiring deal. He might leave anyways to go to a contender by the end of that contract because he'll be like 30. But, you got Schroeder, you got Taurean Prince, John Collins. Really the foundation of their team. It's just going to be a few more years of tanking for the Hawks. I know this is new for them. They made the playoffs, I believe, the last 12 seasons, and this is their first time not making it in 12 years. So it's different for Hawks fans, but I think it'll be alright in the end. I can see them in a few years potentially. They'll be in the playoffs. It's hard to predict everything because they're kind of at the start of their rebuild, so I think they'll be in the playoffs, though, in about 5 years. Next, we got the Heat. Now, the Heat, I don't really like the direction the Heat are in right now. They got some young guys. Here's the problem, though. It's like Dion Waiters, you got him, on the books for many years now. He only played good last year because of a contract year, and he was injured, the whole year. Kelly Olynyk's not bad. He is 27, though, so it's he's basically at his prime, or entering his prime right now. Obviously, you got D-Wade, but, you're not going to move D-Wade or anything. You're just going to ride out D-Wade. Dragic is 32. Whiteside is 28. I think Whiteside will be traded based off the way he played in the playoffs and his comments. James Johnson's 31. The thing is, though, this team isn't bad, but it's I'm not really too fond of their direction. I do like Bam Adebayo, though. Bam Adebayo and Justice Winslow both played pretty well in the playoffs this year. The other thing is they just have so many old players. It's you got Richardson and you got Adebayo and Winslow. I honestly don't think that can get you a championship, and it's probably not that great because if they keep these guys together, they're probably going to be, in the next 2 years, assuming they'll probably trade Whiteside and get someone else that can play that role. They'll probably be a playoff team the next 2 years or so, but you're not going to get any more younger players, and then by the time these guys are in their prime, then it's just going to be hard. They could get to the playoffs still, but I don't see them really going anywhere. I don't see them competing for a championship. Oh, man, we got the Charlotte Hornets. 3 words could describe this so simply. Just blow it up. Because, Kemba Walker is 28. I believe he just turned 28 today. If so, happy birthday. I can't really check from here. But, Kemba Walker's 28. He's at the top of his game that he will most likely be in his whole career. You have Dwight Howard. He's on a heavy contract. I know next year's going to be his last year in this contract, so you could just ride it out. Jeremy Lamb, he had actually not that bad of a year, if I remember. And Nicholas Batum, he had a really bad year, if I can remember. Cody Zeller has never lived up to the number 4 pick potential. Frank Kaminsky, who I really liked in college at Wisconsin, hasn't really done too much. You see here, just last year, he averaged about 12 points a game, but he shot under 40% for a big man. And I think actually, I don't have his stats right here, but I think his points per game are actually lower. Willie Hernan-Gomez, I know he kind of had to adjust since he wasn't there that long, but hopefully maybe when Dwight Howard's gone, because I can't see him ending his career here by any means, that Willie Hernan-Gomez maybe is the center. It could be Kaminsky, it could be Cody Zeller, who knows. Marvin Williams, I think he'll be probably gone as well. I think he might want to go to a contender. Kid Gilchrist hasn't lived up to the hype at all. Malik Monk actually at the end of the year played really good. So I think just Malik Monk, maybe keep Jeremy Lamb, and Willie Hernan-Gomez, and just like start over, because the way this team is constructed right now, they're not getting anywhere. I mean, they didn't even make the playoffs this year. So, and they have a lot of guys on high salaries. And Batum, Dwight Howard, Marvin Williams, Cody Zeller, Kid Gilchrist, all of them. Now we got the Jazz, and I'm really excited about the Jazz. I know they just yesterday got eliminated by the Rockets in 5. I was kind of hoping that would go to 6, but I can understand with all the injury problems of Ricky Rubio. Dante Exum was injured. Yeah, so I mean, I can understand, and I'm completely fine with it. I just wanted it to be a close series, but I mean, this guy last night in the third quarter was unbelievable, and to be honest, he will be a star one day, if he is not already, because he is playing crazy. Rudy Gobert, we already know what Rudy Gobert can do. He's a defensive mastermind, might win Defensive Player of the Year, even though he only played about 58 games, 56 games, somewhere around there. Derek Favors, he's a solid power forward, and I mean, he's still 26, so that's still relatively young. Joe Ingles is 30, but I think the good thing about Joe Ingles is that, I mean, he is like a shooter, mainly, and he doesn't really necessarily use his athleticism. It's kind of like Jokic in a way. So I could see him being really good for the next 4 years or so. Ricky Rubio, he's only 27. He is a playmaker too. And I mean, and then these other guys are just like solid role players, Really, even Royce O'Neal. Most people didn't even know who Royce O'Neal was, and he came in for this team in the playoffs and played really well. So I like this team in the future. They will be competing for a championship in the future. I mean, that's about it. I think even next year they will be better with Gobert healthy the whole year too. And yeah, if you're a Jazz fan, be hyped. Sacramento Kings, not really much to say here. Just let Zebo finish his career there. Just keep tanking, basically. Just keep the tank on. Let De'Aaron Fox do his thing. Buddy Hield too. And I can definitely see this team making the playoffs in about 5 years. Because I mean, they got some young pieces now. I was really impressed with what they did in the draft last year, because they got obviously De'Aaron Fox. They picked up Justin Jackson, who I thought was a steal. I believe he was on that championship team in college. Harry Giles, who, I mean, as long as he can play, I mean, hopefully he can come back to like somewhat of his form in high school, because I remember in high school, some people had him like going number 1, and then he had that injury in college, and he ended up flipping to number 20. And I mean, Frank Mason's not a bad point guard either, so I'm just kind of liking the way the Kings are going. Just basically just keep it up. New York Knicks, next season in general is going to be probably a bad season for the Knicks. But the good thing is they'll probably get another young player, and that's kind of what I'm excited about for the Knicks. Is that, like Kristaps Porzingis, they said he might not play at all next year. But if you're a Knicks fan, I wouldn't be too upset. Because if you think about it, you're not competing next year. I mean, unless LeBron comes there, which is what Cantor wants now. But another young piece that you can put alongside Porzingis, Cantor, Hardaway Jr. And yeah, and it's not so bad. Joakim Noah, he does have 2 more years left on his contract, but I obviously like Joakim Noah since I'm a Bulls fan, but I don't know. I think he could still be solid on the defensive end, and David Fizdale said he might play him next year. So even if he is bad, Knicks fans, then this will solidify that you will most likely get the first pick odds, like in the draft. So wouldn't be too upset. Frank Ntilikina is a nice young player as well. Yeah. Now the Los Angeles Lakers. I've said that the Los Angeles Lakers will have the biggest offseason of any other team this year. And I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, Isaiah Thomas, he's about as good as gone because I'm sure he wants some money. Julius Randle, he can fluctuate. He could stay, he could go. He could stay and they could sign Paul George. He could go and Lakers could sign Paul George, maybe trade for Kawhi Leonard. Or they could sign Paul George and sign LeBron. Or they might not get anyone and they could just keep Julius Randle, which is crazy. Brook Lopez, I think he's gone. I mean, from what I heard, he was very unhappy about how things were going kind of in LA, like his minutes. I know last year he played 30 minutes last year per game. He averaged about 20 points, which is, all right. Obviously, the rebounds is a problem. Like 3.6 that year. I think this season he averaged about 4. So that is definitely not going to cut it. Although they should be happy they got Kyle Kuzma too, because he is a nice young player. And really, Lonzo didn't have a bad rookie year. I also saw, I think there was a stat that the Lakers in games that like Lonzo played were like 4 or 5 games like over 500, I think. So that's really encouraging if you're a Lakers fan, especially if you get someone like Paul George next year. KCP, I would bring him back if you could get him for a cheaper contract. I think that he's $18 million, and I think they kind of knew that from the start. They were just throwing out a 1-year deal. But yeah, and Josh Hart was not bad either. And here's another guy in Luol Deng, which is the good thing about with Luol Deng too. It's kind of like with Joakim Noah. If this team decides not to go after Paul George or LeBron or Kawhi or whoever, then they could just play Luol Deng and just embrace the tank if they think he's that bad. But I honestly think that Luol Deng will get bought out. Hopefully he goes to a contender or something, because I would really like to see him win a ring. And I mean, he wasn't bad. Like, just a few years ago, he was in Miami. Like, this year was not too bad. I mean, 46% from the field, about 35% from 3, 12.6 rebounds, and in the playoffs, I think he played like out of his mind or something that year. But really, for his whole career, he's been a solid player. And I'd just like to see him win a ring. Next, we have the Magic. If you're a Magic fan, I kind of feel bad because this organization is kind of sad. Because, I mean, they didn't want to pay Tobias Harris, and so, I mean, they ended up trading him, I'm pretty sure. And then they didn't want to pay Maurice Harkless, and they let him walk. And then there was somebody else that I know that they didn't want to pay. And they also didn't even pick up his player option, Mario Hezonja. And he actually had a good second half to the year. So, I mean, he could leave. He could very well leave. And he's an unrestricted free agent, I believe. And the other thing is Aaron Gordon is also a free agent. He might just leave, knowing their history of not wanting to pay players what they deserve. So, I mean, I could see him maybe even going to the Suns or something like that, which would kind of be cool to see, just Aaron Gordon and Devin Booker, along with like Josh Jackson and them. But, I mean, if you're a Magic fan, I really don't know what to say. I mean, you could tank, but it's like you might be stuck in Tankville for a long time. And then you could try to compete, but to be honest, your team might not even be good enough to compete. So, I'd probably say just, I mean, it's really hard. I mean, if you guys make a crazy trade, maybe get like, I don't know, maybe like you guys get Kawhi of all teams, and that would be interesting. And, yeah, I mean, I don't really know what to say about the Magic. Dallas Mavericks, I mean, just embrace the tank. Let Dennis Smith Jr. do his thing out there. Nerlens Noel, he had a terrible season. My boy Yogi, doing his thing. Dougie McBuckets. But, yeah, I mean, just ride on the tank at least until Dirk retires, for sure. Just, let Dirk have his, like, Kobe moment where it's like, whenever his last season, if it's this year, next year, obviously not this year, but like next year, maybe a year after, who knows? He could be playing like 21, 22 years. But yeah, just like let Dirk have his cool moment. And I mean, Harrison Barnes, he's 25 years old. Just last year averaged 19. I think this year he averaged 18, so his numbers slightly went down, but still, I mean, not a bad player. So yeah, just keep tanking. The Nets, I would like to see what happens with them this year because they have 3-point guards. I think the thing that will happen is that if they do keep all these guys, I think Dinwiddie is going to be the starting point guard. And then you have D'Angelo Russell, the starting shooting guard, with Jeremy Lin off the bench. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Jeremy Lin is gone. They might just trade him or something, especially since he had an injury at the beginning of the year. Maybe they surprise us all and they don't get Spencer Dinwiddie, but he was probably second. Nah, I wouldn't say second, but he was definitely in the top 5 for the most improved player award. So the Nets, they could be in the playoffs in about 5 years, but it kind of just depends. They are the Nets, so I mean, we'll see. They also did get Jahlil Okafor, who I thought was going to be better with them. I know he was only there half a year so far, but I mean, hopefully they can, get a center or something. I know they have Jared Allen, but if he can improve his game a little bit, then probably. And then you got your forwards like Hollis. Next, we have the Denver Nuggets. Now, the Denver Nuggets probably were my favorite team to watch this season. Mainly because, you got Jokic and Paul Millsap. Paul Millsap can do stuff on both sides of the floor, obviously offense and defense. Jokic is just fun to watch all around. Gary Harris was putting up about 17, 18 points a game, and Jamal Murray was around 16 a game. Will Barton was putting up like 15 a game. One thing I will say, though, is that this team will most likely trade Kenneth Faried. He kind of fell out of the rotation this year. I still believe in Kenneth Faried, though. I think he's a solid player. He kind of reminds me, obviously, of Nene. I don't know if that's just because he starts his career in the Nuggets and has that kind of like dreadlock hair, but yeah. So I thought at the beginning of the year too that they were gonna have the best bench because you look at their starting lineup. You got obviously these 4, and then Wilson Chandler. But then on the bench, you got like Will Barton, Faried, Trey Lyles, Mason Plumlee, Richard Jefferson. At the time they had Moutier, but Devin Harris, Juan Hernan-Gomez, I thought was a solid player. But they really, later as the season progressed, they stopped using their bench. So, I would like to see the Nuggets get in the playoffs next year. I think they will get in the playoffs next year. But regardless, for the next 6 or so years at least, they will be a great team. Next we have the Indiana Pacers. If you're a Pacers fan, I would definitely be proud of the season you just had. You took the Cavaliers to 7 games, which was pretty good. Obviously I'm sure they wanted to win, but that's still obviously not the end of the world. You guys were supposed to be in the lottery this year. Miles Turner was supposed to maybe be an all-star this year. Didn't really work out, but the other thing is I believe his minutes went down a lot this year, and he also impacted the game in other ways, so I wouldn't say he necessarily had a disappointing year. Darren Collison, he's always like a 10-point per game scorer. I think he's averaged like 10 points a game every season of his career. Bogdanovich, in the first round of the playoffs, like the first half of the first round, he was pretty good. Thad Young was good the whole first round. And these two guys, Oladipo and Sabonis, nobody thought that they would be playing as good as they have been this season. Everybody, including myself, thought that the Pacers got completely fleeced, giving up Paul George, and they got back Oladipo, who was, like an okay starter at the time, and then you had Sabonis, who was like, oh, this guy's like a, second, third string big man. Al Jefferson's still not bad. Lance Stevenson. You got to keep Lance around. But Yeah, I like the direction this team's going in. They'll definitely be a playoff team next year. And yeah, um, yeah, I could see them maybe getting to the second round next year. It's kind of hard to tell because like so many teams now in the East are starting to pick up their game. Like you got obviously the Celtics, the Sixers. Who knows? I mean, like if LeBron stays, obviously the Cavs will still be there. If the Raptors keep their core intact, they'll still be there. Then you got the Pacers. I'm assuming the Bucks will be better. The Wizards are still a thing. You know, maybe the Pistons will be better with a full season, but who knows? The Pelicans. I was kind of impressed with the way the Pelicans played in the playoffs this year. I guess playoff Rondo is a real thing, but yeah. I mean, if you just look at like these starting five, I'd probably throw Etuan Moore in there. And then you have Mirotic off the bench who could give you like 14, 15 a game. You know, Emeka Okafor, that was, I thought, a really good pickup for them. I mean, for about basically $1 million. I know the guy is 35, but, I mean, he's been trying to play for like 4 or 5 years after, I think, like a neck injury or something. Solomon Hill, Darius Miller, both played good in the playoffs. Ian Clark's not a bad shooter either. This team's going to be interesting. I think they'll be, I don't know, it'll just be interesting to see because for the most part they have a lot of their like main guys are young. Davis is 25. Holiday and Cousins are 27 as well as Mirotic. Rondo is 32, but I mean when he gets to the playoffs he's a whole nother level. Etuan Moore is under 30 right now. Solomon Hill, Shaq Diallo is a pretty young player that could maybe embrace that bench role off the bench for being a big man. Ian Clark. It'd be interesting to see. Do I think they will win a title with the main pieces they are right now? Probably not. Made the playoffs, so they could be a completely different. Next, the Pistons. I think the Pistons will probably make the playoffs next year. Over the. It'll either be the Heat or the Wizards. It kind of just depends on how things go. I just think the Pistons will get in. But, I mean, if the Wizards make a move, then the Pistons will probably get in over them. Otherwise, they'll probably be over the Heat. But I just feel like for some reason that they're going to get in. They had Blake Griffin halfway through the year. They traded away Tobias Harris and Avery Bradley for him. And Boban Marjanovic and I think a pick or something. But, yeah, they started off really good with Blake Griffin. I think they either won 5 or 6 in a row, and then just everything kind of like fell down. But really, I mean, the Detroit Pistons, that was kind of how they were before that. I mean, they were hanging around like top 3, 4 in the conference, I believe, for like, I believe like 25 games or so, 30 games. And then they just like lost a bunch, and then they fell out of the playoff picture. They're like, okay, we need to do something. So then they trade for Blake Griffin. They get back in the playoff picture for a little bit, and then they fell right back out, which is, I mean, kind of disappointing. But in the same time, I mean, Reggie Bullock had a better year. Also, Reggie Jackson missed a lot of the season with injury. Stanley Johnson, just, oh my God. Luke Kennard was actually not a bad pick. I'm sure obviously they'd like to have the 13th pick now in Donovan Mitchell. But Luke Kennard, I could see him becoming a solid piece for their team. Toronto Raptors. Yeah. So, I honestly think this whole team should just blow up. I mean, if you look at it like Kyle Lowry is 32. I mean, DeRozan by next season is going to be 29. You know, Ibaka is going to be like 29, and Valanciunas is 26 right now. I honestly think you should just trade everyone. I mean, what I do is I keep my bench players. Keep Van Vliet, Siakam, OG Anunoby for sure, Jakob Poeltl, Norman Powell. Keep all the young guys because, I mean, obviously you guys had like the best bench this season. But the thing is that these guys are intimidated by LeBron and the Cavs. And the thing is, not, like, LeBron and the Cavs, like, they're not going to go away, like, necessarily anytime soon if he's still there. I mean, like, LeBron's not going to just fade off. So, I mean, I would just, like, split it up. And, I mean, how much longer is Kyle Lowry really going to be great? I know this year his numbers, like, took a huge toll. Like, I believe he was averaging, like, 17 a game or something, along with, like, 4 rebounds and, like, 5 assists or so. I know his numbers took a huge toll. DeRozan's also did as well. I know they were playing more team basketball, but, I mean, when you're playing the Cavs, or when you're playing, like, an up-tempo team, maybe, like, the Sixers as well, like, you're just, it completely changes the whole scheme of your game. And, I mean, it clearly showed just getting swept by the Cavaliers when you guys were, like, favorites. It's just kind of embarrassing. DeMar DeRozan, that was, I don't know. In my opinion, that was the worst playoff series you have ever played. Kyle Lowry, I won't say it was the worst you've ever played because you played awful every game, basically against the Cavs in the past. I know you had, like, I think 1 or 2 games where you were okay. But, yeah, Serge Ibaka, I don't even know where you were, like, half the series. And Valanciunas did not play bad for the most part. I know the first game he had, like, a 20-20 game. And then the last game he actually had a pretty good game off the bench. So I would definitely trade Lowry for sure. And, I mean, if you're asking me, I mean, you might as well just trade Ibaka and DeRozan because this team is not getting anywhere. But if they, I'll go back. But if they do keep this team together, they will make the playoffs next year. I will say that. But I just think there'll be a second round exit again. If they get rid of everyone, then they'll be tanking for a while, which is probably the best route to start now than in about 4 years. I mean, this team's going to be a contender for the next, like, 4 or 5 years at least. You know, you got Chris Paul. He's going to be good for about 3 more years at least. And he could be playing like an all-star at least for 2 or 3 more years before he starts to take, like, noticeable digression. James Harden, I mean, the league's MVP basically this year. And Clint Capella's only 23. And you got so many shooters, bro. Excuse me. So, I think this team is, to be safe, I'm going to say they're the second best team in the NBA right now. Because, I mean, I can't really put them ahead of the Warriors unless they beat them, which I believe that series starts next Monday. But, yeah, I mean, they're going to be competing in the next 4 or 5 years. Hopefully they can win a title. I would love to see Chris Paul win a title. I mean, I've kind of felt bad for him. Before this, he hadn't even made it to the conference finals. And, I mean, James Harden, I know it kind of sucks for him, too. Because it seems like he just, like, sometimes, like, chokes in a way. So, I mean, I don't want him to have, like, the label of these guys right here. But, yeah, hopefully they can at least win a title. Excuse me. Next is the Spurs. If you're asking me, I think Kawhi Leonard's gone. Now, where do I think he's going? Like, the main destinations that there's, like, the Sixers, there's the Lakers, and there's the Knicks. But, I mean, if you think about the Sixers, they would have to trade away, like, Markelle Fultz and stuff, and then you'd kind of just be really forward-heavy. And, I mean, if you think about the Knicks, like, why would the Knicks necessarily make a trade for Kawhi Leonard, and how could they make a trade for Kawhi Leonard? Because I don't think the Spurs would necessarily take, like, just like Frank Ntilikina and, like, some picks for Kawhi Leonard and stuff. I think, honestly, the Lakers is probably the best bet, mainly because of the way Kyle Kuzma has played this year. And, I mean, it sucks if this is how it goes, but, I mean, Kyle Kuzma has played so well this year that they could throw him in along with maybe, like, a future first-round pick, maybe another young player on that roster, maybe like Zubac or something, because he's a solid young center. And you might even have to throw in another pick, maybe first or second round, for Kawhi Leonard, But I mean, if you're getting Kawhi Leonard, who is a top 3, top 5 player in the NBA when healthy, I honestly think it's worth it. And if you have Kawhi Leonard go there with Paul George, and I mean you still have Lonzo Ball, you have Brandon Ingram, they could be a nasty team. But I mean, just assuming Kawhi stays, obviously they're still a playoff team. I don't see them being better than the Rockets or the Warriors, though. And I mean, honestly, even if Kawhi leaves, with the way the Spurs have been run so long, I can't picture them not making the playoffs. I feel like they would still make the playoffs, maybe as a 7 or 8 seed again or something. But I don't see them missing the playoffs. They would lose in the first round though without Kawhi, but yeah. As for some of these guys like Tony Parker, Pau, Manu, I really hope Manu doesn't retire. I mean, he's one of my top 10 favorite players of all time. So hopefully Manu stays, and yeah. Next we have the Suns. Now, I would not be surprised if the Suns have a surprising year. I remember just 4 years ago, it was just about 4 years ago that they won about 48 games, but people overlooked that because of the fact that they didn't make the playoffs. But they won about 48 games with, I believe, Dragic and Bledsoe. I feel like this team next season, assuming that they have the first pick and they get DeAndre Ayton, they could be one of those teams that has a great season that just doesn't make the playoffs. I mean, Devin Booker's already said, I'm tired of not making the playoffs. I will never miss the playoffs again, which will probably not be true. I mean, I'm still assuming they'll miss the playoffs next year. But, I mean, in 5 years, if you have Devin Booker along with DeAndre Ayton, T.J. Warren is still 24 years old. In about 5 years, he won't even be 30. And, I mean, you still have Josh Jackson, too. You could play one of them at power forward, maybe. Elfrid Payton, I think he's kind of a good fit with the team. But, I mean, even if not that, I could see, if they don't want to bring back Elfrid Payton, maybe they go after a guy in Boston named Terry Rozier or something. Alex Len is not a bad backup center. Actually, he's a really good backup center. I just don't see him as a starting center in this league. Tyson Chandler next year is going to be on his last year of his contract, so that will be good for them. Brandon Knight will be healthy next year, which, I mean, Brandon Knight is not a bad player. I know people say that he is because of how unlucky he's been. But, I mean, just look at, some years, he averaged, about 20 points a game that year, 18, 17. Those are relatively good seasons for him. Marquise Chris and Dragon Bender, to be honest, and also Alec Peters, who had a crazy game his last game of the season and is my guy. With Alec Peters, though, Dragon Bender and Marquise Chris, they have to hit on one of those three guys. Because if just at least one of them becomes a solid starter in this league, then they'll be set. I mean, they'll have the power forward. You obviously have Ayton at center, if it's Elfrid Payton or whoever's playing point guard. You obviously have Devin Booker. And, I mean, you could also put one of these guys at power forward, but I kind of like the idea of one of them coming off the bench. Most likely T.J. Warren. Later on, I feel like T.J. Warren could almost be like a Tobias Harris. So, and I mean, obviously you have Alex Len to come off the bench. Allen Williams, I believe he didn't play at all this season because of injury. But he is not a bad player either. I mean, just in his second year, he shot about 52% from the field. About 7 points, 6 rebounds. So, per 36, I mean, no guarantee he'd play the same exact way, for the whole time that he was not playing. But, I mean, if he was, this is how he'd playing. He could be a double-double guy, potentially. But they will be a great team in 5 years. I could see them maybe competing for a championship in about 5 or so years, too. Okay. So, the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, can we just say that Paul George is gone? Because, I mean, he is. Paul George is as good as gone. I know Russell Westbrook, like, today was in trade rumors or whatever. Like, all these trade rumors are coming out. Like, Russell Westbrook might be traded. I don't think they'll trade him. Do I think they should trade him? Probably. They could maybe trade him to a team like the Pistons, who wants to take all these high contracts up. So, they could take a guy like Westbrook, and they're missing a point guard anyways. Carmelo Anthony, I don't know what happened to him this year. I mean, just last year he was putting up such great numbers. I know your numbers are going to fall down when you're playing with two other All-Stars, but I mean, his efficiency too, like especially in the playoffs, was so bad. Like, it was surprising. Andre Roberson is the main reason why they probably didn't do as well as they expected in the playoffs. Because, I mean, he's, I'd say he's like a very significant like catalyst to their defense. And I mean, they're just like, when you look at everyone else, like, they're just an old team. I mean, Kyle Singler, who knew he was still on the roster? He's been on the roster for 4 years, and he's been, like, in the concession stand selling hot dogs, like, the whole time. And, I mean, Nick Collison's 37. I do like Nick Collison, though. I think he said this is his last year, though. I mean, Corey Brewer's 32. Patrick Patterson's, like, about 30. Raymond Felton, like, Tubster right there. Like, come on. Like, I don't see this team get going anywhere if they keep these guys. I mean, I think Paul George is definitely gone, which means I think Melo will play better next year, knowing that he'll be, like, the starting small forward, probably the second option. Like, the only thing that was really good for this team, though, this year was Steven Adams. He did have a really good year. I can't pull up the stats, obviously. But I know this season he had a really good season, so that is one thing to look forward to. The Minnesota Timberwolves, I mean, my only disappointment here is, like, what Towns and Wiggins and, like, these young guys, like, what they didn't accomplish when Jimmy Butler was injured. Because I know with Jimmy Butler healthy, they were around third or fourth with, like, the Spurs for a while. And then once Jimmy went out, like, they almost missed the playoffs. Like, they had to play a final regular season game against the Denver Nuggets to see if they would even get in the playoffs. So, yeah, that's my only disappointment there. But I think with Jimmy healthy next year, I think they will be a top 4 seed. Jeff Teague is a solid point guard. Taj Gibson doing his thing. They got a lot of, like, guys in their prime, I'd say, right now. Like, in their prime years. I mean, other than my boy D Rose. But, I mean, D Rose in the playoffs played really well. Like, honestly, I know I'm a Bulls fan. And I am also a D Rose fan. He is my favorite player of all time. But, I mean, I would like to see D Rose start over Jeff Teague, to be honest. I just think it would be interesting. Because, I mean, in the playoffs, Rose was probably their second best player. Maybe they're even their best player. He was probably their best player. Andrew Wiggins averaged more points per game, but I mean, what this guy was doing, like, in his time playing was really good. And I mean, they got a bunch of other guys too, like Jamal Crawford. He's a great bench player for the long run. Gorgie Zhang, Bielitsa, Tyus Jones is not a bad backup point guard. So, yeah. Portland Trailblazers, the thing that sucks about Portland is that, I know Stephen A. Smith actually said it on a show today, that the Portland Trailblazers are a better version of the Wizards. And I kind of agree. They can't really trade away any of these guys. I know, like, everyone on their team is younger than 30 years old, but if you just look at these contracts, like, Shabazz Napier is not on a bad contract, but he's on an expiring deal, so he'll be a free agent. Ed Davis will be a free agent. Aminu, like $8 million for Aminu, I don't think people would take that. Evan Turner, definitely no one's taking that. Maurice Harkless, no one will be taking that. Pat Connaughton, yeah, you could trade him, but what are you going to get back? And I mean, same thing with Myers Leonard, and no one's taking that contract anyways. Zach Collins is your young piece, but he's obviously not completely developed yet. And I mean, everyone else is just like, you can't trade, like, you only could trade maybe 4 players and get something worth it. But these 2 are free agents, one of which I believe is unrestricted, and I know Nurkic is restricted. But I mean, these guys, like, I think you would have to trade either Lillard or McCollum. I would probably trade McCollum just because, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like I'd rather see Lillard like stay than McCollum. But the other thing is that with Lillard, you could get more trade value because he's been an All-Star multiple years. He's been an All-NBA team member. So, I mean, I don't know. They might have to trade one of these guys, though. Golden State Warriors, they're going to be competing for a long time. I mean, their 4 best players. I mean, Curry just turned 30, but the other 3 are under 30. Do I have to go on? I mean, it's kind of easy. Washington Wizards, last team. I mean, it's the same situation with Portland, really. They're probably going to have to trade one of these guys. I mean, no one's taken Otto Porter's huge contract. He hasn't played, in my opinion, to earn $25 million a year. You know? Marcin Gortat, I think he just, like, I don't know, like someone took his talents this year or something. Markieff Morris, I mean, he's 28 years old, though. And it's like I don't know. You won't get anything like crazy for him. Kelly Oubre Jr. did have a good year this year, though. As for the rest of the team, I just think if they make a move, they'll start the rebuild and they won't make the playoffs. But if they do make a move, they won't make the playoffs, right? And then if they don't make a move, though, they'll just be like that average team again. You know, maybe they'll get a little bit further than the Blazers because they're playing in the Eastern Conference. But I don't see them getting any further in the second round, which has been their limit for the past, I believe, 5 years. So, I mean, that kind of just sums it up. I mean, you got, obviously, the Warriors. But the one thing that I wanted to say is that I'm going to go over, like, all these teams that I have that could literally be competing for the playoffs next year. And I'm going to kind of rank them. So, obviously, the first set of teams is, like, the Rockets and the Warriors. Those are, like, the 2 top in the West. I'm starting with the West, by the way. The Rockets and the Warriors will be, like, the 2 best teams. Then it's like you have your middle teams, which could be, I mean, the middle teams could really go from Timberwolves, the Jazz, like the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Pelicans, the Spurs, Clippers, Thunder, Trailblazers, you know. And then also the Phoenix Suns and the Memphis Grizzlies will both be kind of close, but they won't make the playoffs. And then, I mean, you got the Kings and Mavericks who are just going to tank, in my opinion. And for the Eastern Conference, I mean, you got your 3 top teams in the Celtics, Sixers, and Cavs. And then, I mean, I think next you have, like, the Raptors and the Bucks and Pacers. And then I think after that you got, like, Pistons, Wizards, and Heat, like, in their own. Everyone else, like, the Bulls, Hornets, Magic, Nets, Hawks, and Knicks will kind of be in the tanking category. Maybe the Bulls will be a little bit higher because they did seem to play well in the second half of the season. But, I mean, that's kind of about it. So, I mean, that's kind of just how I see things for the next many years and how things I'm expecting will go for the next many years. So, yeah, that's about it. Let's get this on my team. And thank you guys for watching. And I'll see you guys on the next one.